It has been another year, and I'm sorry that I barely upload. From work, studies, and a baby, time is hard to come by. But I did want to keep my tradition alive and do a dedicated month in October to a visual novel, and this time I've chosen Phoenix Wright. So my history with the game is actually pretty short. I had seen many people making jokes and references online before I finally picked up the game on the Nintendo DS. From there I played and had quite a bit of fun solving the cases, but I stopped after the 4th and never picked it up again. I wonder why. Was it bad, or did I just grow bored? Because it's unusual for me to just drop a game before finishing it. So I wanted to find out what happened and answer the question, is Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney worth it? Despite playing it on the DS, the first game was originally released on the Game Boy Advance in 2001 with crunchier music and art. I haven't played that version because it is only in Japanese and I don't know how to read or write it except for maybe the word Sora because I played too much Kingdom Hearts. So it was eventually ported over to the DS 4 years later in 2005 with an English option, and boom! Ace Attorney can now be played in the West. But it was not a straight port of the first game, as it did upgrade the graphics and music. It also added a brand new case, the 5th one, expanding upon the game. Ace Attorney is mostly a visual novel with some gameplay elements included. You play as Phoenix Wright, a rookie attorney who has not even had his first case yet. He works for Mia Fey, a renowned attorney and mentor. The gist of the game is that a murder happens. You must then investigate it, and then during the courtroom parts you have to cross-examine witnesses in order to find contradictions in their statements. By doing this, the client becomes unraveled and any lies that they were concealing are brought to light, thus finding the truth and usually the culprit. Honestly, the gameplay is very light and easy. During the investigations you have a menu and you can examine the room that you're in, you can talk to the people, and you can present evidence to them in hopes for them to give you more information. The final case does offer a little bit more because you can examine evidence more closely. These were only added to show off the DS and its capabilities. There are also a few mini games here as well, such as rotating objects so they fit into a certain shape, but these are few and far between. The crux of the trial is listening to people talk and then pointing out the contradictions with your evidence. The gameplay loop is actually pretty fun, as each story has a fun and unique cast of characters with huge personalities. It is never dull and most people are pretty memorable. There are a few side characters as well, like Mia Fey, your mentor, Maya Fey, her sister, and Miles Edgeworth, who is a rival prosecutor and will make your life hard as you're going through the game. But I do have some issues with the game, mainly the cases and their pacing. The first case shows you the murderer, which is alright because it is the tutorial I guess, but the next case does this as well. So it takes a lot of tension out of solving the crime when it's pretty clear who did it. That also means you have information that Phoenix does not, which can mess you up if you aren't paying attention, because if you put evidence forth that Phoenix doesn't realize, then, well, you'll be penalized. But in case 3 and case 5, they do make it pretty obvious who is behind it and their motive and what's going on. Sure, you may not know all of the tiny details, but when I can guess the murderer and their motive on the first instance I meet them, then that's probably poor writing and poor setup. This is not an issue in the 4th case though, as it does have proper twists and much better pacing, and it's probably the best one of the entire bunch. But that lends to the issue I had and why I stopped the game in the first place. It becomes a little repetitive. Sure, each case has different stories, but they feel like they drag on due to already knowing everything. That sense of investigation and discovery are somewhat lessened when it's a little boring. The court parts are much better as you are actively pointing out holes in somebody's argument, but sometimes my logic didn't quite line up with Phoenix's. There was some issues of trying to figure out what I was supposed to do at any given time. That's why when I started the 5th case back in the day, I got a little bit bored in this formula. And by the way, the 5th case goes on way too long. It is massive and crazy, and it did not need to be that extensive. But I have to remember that the original way to play this game was on the go. It was on the Game Boy Advance, and you were supposed to do it in bite-sized chunks. That's why each section is kind of short, and playing it that way instead of all at once might actually help with my issues, or maybe it might make them worse, I'm not sure. Regardless of if I was getting bored, I left every case feeling very satisfied, and it has a lot to do with the pursuit music. When you yell "Objection!" and you're facing the climax and the final clues are being thrown out and you're giving it your all and that music is playing, and oh my god, it is so hype. And there was one time in the 4th case when they were doing this and I had drunk too much coffee and I was just like really hyper, and then that music started playing and I was just going way over the top, and it was It was pretty crazy. So it was so much fun, and yeah, it just gets you hyped every time. So the final case was added into the game as a way to not only enhance and extend the original, but it also plays with the capabilities of the DS with 3D models and the like. It also introduces a few new characters like Emma Sky, who will be more important in the future. The premise of this case is also really good. One person was murdered at 2 different locations by 2 different people at the same time. How? Ugh, that's such a good setup. But figuring all of that out takes forever. This case is just way too long. It could have been trimmed back, but I wonder if it's padding just to give extra hours of new content to the game. As a last aside, this game also has been ported to the DS, the 3DS, the Wii, with motion controls as well, which is pretty cool. You can point the Wii remote at the screen like your finger and yell "objection" to the television, which is incredibly lame. But it's also the best thing I've ever heard. The whole trilogy has been bundled and ported pretty much everywhere, like the PS4, Xbox, and PC, where some things had to be altered, of course, like blowing into a microphone is removed, and now you just press a button for those actions. No real loss in my opinion, and that's how I ended up replaying the game on my PS4. So I wind up in a very hard place here, but in my opinion, Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney is worth it for its fun characters, good gameplay, and killer pursuit music. While the cases tend to be not that hard to solve, noticing the little details and pointing them out is still pretty fun. There are times where you might get stuck, especially if your logic doesn't quite line up with what they're asking for, which sucks big time, but I don't know if that's the game's fault or if it's just my fault. I just wish these stories had more layers to them and the culprits weren't so easy to figure out. Maybe they will improve upon these in the next games. I hope so. Tell me what you thought about Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney. Did you like it? Did you hate it? And which was your favorite case and why? Like I said, mine is 4 due to the twisty nature and me being so hyped on coffee when that pursuit music kicked in. Made it so much more fun. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!